Warning: some contents may be disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised. Back around 1991, I was 20 and newly single for my first love. I was unemployed and living with 2 friends. I started hanging out with one of my friend's church friends, kind of like street church people. No denomination, just basic Christian beliefs, and nothing crazy at all. Anyways, there were about 5 of them sharing a pretty big apartment, and we would all hang out there, and many people would drop by. Then, this one girl, Bernice, dropped by one day. A very pretty girl, by the way, but around 7 to 8 years older than I was. And when you're 20, that can seem like a pretty significant age difference. But whatever, irrelevant I suppose. Although she was pretty, I just wasn't immediately into her, is my point. Once she first saw me in the apartment though, she would not stop staring at me the entire time that she was there. And she was very obvious about it, and everyone at the apartment could tell that she was acting really creepy towards me. Everyone was kind of looking at her and noticing that she was very fixated. And then I remember them trying to talk to her to get her out of her trance, but she would barely acknowledge anyone else talking to her. There was so much tension in the 1 to 2 hours that she was there. I was new among this group and a shy person in general, so I didn't want to come out and ask her, "What the fuck is going on?" As I'm sure many other people would have. So I just stayed in my corner and I kept watching TV and tried not to look in her direction. Then, once she finally left, I could breathe again. They eventually admitted to me that she had a few psychological problems. Well, it's the best way I can remember their description. It was a long time ago, so I don't remember exactly what they said about her, so I'm trying to keep it simple. After this revelation, her weird behavior made a smidge more sense. But it still didn't point out to what this all had to do with her fixation towards me that night. Maybe it was because that I was the new guy in the group that night, and she was not used to seeing anyone new. Who knows, I thought. Regardless, it was disturbing and it made me anxious about seeing her again. So about a week later, I think, I drop in and everyone is staring at me when I walk through the door. "What's going on?" I ask. "Bernice was here today," they said. "And?" I ask. "She left a letter that she wrote for you here." She had written a 2 or 3 page letter to me that she just left on the table for anyone else to see and read if they wanted to, which is why they were all acting so freaked out when they told me about it. Anyways, they told me that it wasn't good. Basically, from what I recall, she starts out quite rambling about when she first saw me, she thought that I was Jesus. And then she goes on and on about it, saying things like, I'm not 100% sure if you are or not, but I think you are. And I love you with all of my heart. I can't stop thinking about you. I just want to be together. And etc. I almost shit myself halfway through reading this thing, and everyone there is just in suspense as they are watching me read it. And once I was done, I was probably as pale as a ghost. I seem to remember them telling me not to worry about it too much, and that they would make sure that she would not come around. In a nice way, mind you, especially if I was there. Then, being in a relatively small town, about a year or more later on, I bump into her at a club. Damn. It was about 2 or 3 days before Christmas. I said hello just to be polite because she came right up to me. My heart was in my throat, and I imagine I probably started sweating profusely in that instant. I remember her talking to me kind of normal for a few minutes, normal chit-chat about how I was and stuff. So I thought, okay, maybe she came to her senses a little. I was hoping and praying. I let my guard down a little and then started to relax. Within 5 minutes of the conversation though, she drops a bomb and then invites me for Christmas supper at her mom's house with just her and her mother. This may sound like an innocent and possibly nice thing to do under normal circumstances, but definitely not in these circumstances. This is way too much. So I was out pretty damn quick. This happened about a decade ago when I was 19. At that time, I rented an apartment in a west side neighborhood of Chicago with my sister who was a year older than me. We both work hospitality jobs in the city, and we both had pretty robust social lives, so it was fairly typical for one or both of us to get home at weird hours or maybe be out all night. I would take the pink line to and from work. At this point in my life, I was pretty used to being catcalled while walking down the street. I'd been flashed on public transportation a few times, and men would bump into me from behind on packed trains. Basically, the usual amount of sexual harassment for a young woman living in the city. Not much fazed me really. Of course, it was uncomfortable, but I was never truly terrified. Until one night. That night, I was coming home from work well after midnight. The train car I was in had been empty for most of the ride. And one stop before mine, a man gets on and sits down in my car. Reflexively, I look up as this new passenger entered the car. We made eye contact. Immediately, I felt the hair stand up on the back of my neck. I knew I'd made a mistake, that this might be interpreted as some sort of invitation. So I quickly looked away, but I felt him watching me as the train pulled away from the station. Since my stop was only one stop away, I decided to wait until the last second to stand up and then exit the car, just in case he tried to follow me. Well, he did. He hung back about 30 feet at first, but I felt the gap between us closing and his footsteps were getting louder. Then I hear him trying to catch my attention, saying, "Hey!" He then catches up to me and starts speaking to me like any other man trying to chat me up would. I still couldn't shake the feeling of genuine fear that I'd had since first locking eyes with him in the train car. He asked me where I'm headed. I told him that I was going home. He asked if there was anyone waiting up for me this late, and I told him that my boyfriend was. In reality, I knew my sister was working a night shift and I was going home to an empty apartment. But then, he pulled his shirt to the side, exposing a gun in his waistband. In a joking tone, he said that he would fight my boyfriend for me. I laughed along and I just kept walking. We were walking down Cermak, which is a pretty busy street even that late at night. I knew that I couldn't let them follow me to my apartment. So, when I came to the cross street where I should have turned, I just kept going straight. Eventually, I had walked far enough that I passed the stop where he had originally got on the train. He walked alongside me for a while, then dropped back and eventually stopped. I thought that I would be relieved once I'd shaken him, but as soon as I couldn't see him anymore, my fear only heightened. I still had to double back to my apartment somehow, and the trains had stopped running at 2 a.m. I figured that he knew that I'd walked too far and would have to turn around, so I thought that it was possible that he was posted up somewhere there waiting for me. I turned off and walked a few blocks north, and then started my less than a mile walk back west toward my apartment. The walk back was excruciating, since I was now off the main road. It was much darker, and there was absolutely nobody around. I kept telling myself that I had to get home safe for my sister, because she would never be able to live with herself if something happened to me. I kept putting one foot in front of the other, and when I finally made it into my apartment and locked the door behind me, I collapsed in a puddle of tears. 10 years later on, I've never felt fear again like I did that night, and to this day, I have never told my sister about it.
I have been reluctant to post this. It's just way too close to home. But you know what? I don't really have anyone to turn to for advice, so, if you have any clue what I should do next, well, I'm all ears. My girlfriend is a victim of stalking. I'm not going to mention her name, or even where she lives, just in case the stalker is reading this. My girlfriend goes to college, university. She was living at her parents' home at the time this happened. Thankfully, her parents didn't live too far away from campus. I heard from one of her friends that someone had been calling her from an unknown number and following her home after classes. I was so shocked and disgusted at that. One of her friends said that someone grabbed her on the shoulder on the way home. I just couldn't believe what I heard. I decided I would keep an eye on her when she walked home, but at a distance, just to make sure she got home safely. Plus, I didn't want to make her feel like I was escorting her. I did this whenever I was free, which was pretty often actually. If I wasn't able to make it there in person, I would sometimes give her a call. Honestly, she hung up on me more often than not, and when she was walking home, it almost sounded as if she was sobbing sometimes. I really felt for her, I didn't really know how to help her, but then I thought of something. I heard my girlfriend ask her friend if she could go and stay with her, because she was so stressed out by all the stalking. I decided I would make use of my paid annual leave to stand guard outside her friend's apartment. I was going to patrol the area and make sure that they were both okay. I had to be prepared to step it up if the stalker was prepared to up his game. My girlfriend was going to be staying over at her friend's place, and I knew her friend lived alone. That made both of them seem pretty vulnerable to me. They were definitely targets in a stalker's eyes. I didn't really need to bust in and ruin their night. They didn't even have to know I was there, really. I just needed to watch over them, by any means necessary. I'm not that familiar or friendly with her friend anyway, so it would have been a shock if I just invited myself into her home. I was volunteering my time to ensure their safety. I wanted them to have a normal night and not even know I was there, so I just stood watch outside the building. I saw my girlfriend arrive and enter her friend's apartment. I watched on, looking out for suspicious people. I saw the lights dim in the apartment and then eventually go out when the hour was late. The apartment was enveloped in darkness. I took that opportunity to call my girlfriend to check in with her. She hadn't been taking many calls lately because of that stalker, but since she was with her friend, she answered. I didn't know how long I would have before she would cut me off. She was probably nervous or scared, so I tried to say a few words to reassure her quickly. I wanted her to know she was safe because I was close by. So I said, "Hey, don't worry, I'm close by." It had been a while since we spoke on the phone actually, so I guessed she might have been surprised to hear my voice again. It seemed like she was still terrified by this damn stalker, her response to my kind words was little more than a short, sharp scream. I heard her friend in the background question her. "Is that the stalker?" she asked. There was a bit of a scuffle, and I think that her friend took the phone off of her. I was surprised that the stalker had the gall to appear when I was out on patrol so close to my girlfriend. So I rushed over to the apartment building to brace myself for an encounter. Looking up at her friend's place, I saw the lights go on. I asked her over the phone, "Are you okay?" I could hear my girlfriend crying in the background. She sounded like an absolute mess. The only words I could make out were, "Help me." Then I saw the window open above me, and I locked eyes with my girlfriend's friend. She looked down at me and ended the call. She probably realized that they were safe, but I wonder who she called next, as I could still see her talking up there. Well, I needed to know who she was calling, so I went to her apartment door and I just started knocking. After a short while, a few policemen arrived. I told the policemen that I had the situation under control and I was going to find the stalker. And you'll never guess what happened next. They mistook me for the stalker. Can you believe that? I actually got arrested. They said that my girlfriend's friend identified me as the stalker. I told them that this was just a simple misunderstanding and we could resolve it, but they didn't listen. They took me to their police car and I was sat down in the back. I told them that the real stalker must be hiding nearby, and they would be better off to go looking for him instead of arresting a guy who's watching over those two women, protecting them. They took me back to the police station and I was questioned. I told them everything. I told them about me and my girlfriend, and they didn't seem to believe that we were an item. They're pretty dumb cops if you ask me. They forced me to sign some stupid documents, but signing them meant that they were releasing me. Since then, the number of police patrols near my girlfriend's apartment has increased. I guess that I can cut back on my role as her escort and maybe even watch over her a little less. It's been a year since all that happened. It seems as if my girlfriend is in a much better place. When I see her, it looks like she's gaining her confidence. I know what time she gets her coffee in the morning, and I make sure I'm there just to see how she's doing. Well, the reason I'm sharing this with you is because I don't want to sound anxious, but I have a feeling that my girlfriend is kind of moving on. I know I haven't seen her as much as I used to. I could probably do better in that respect, but she just can't move on, right? I deserve at least a reason for why, and a chance to fight for her. Like I said, it's been a year, and the police presence is gradually reducing. What if the stalker came back? What if he was waiting for his chance for the police to back down? She doesn't seem concerned by the idea that the stalker could come back. Anyway, I'm thinking of going to see her this weekend. It's really been a while. I honestly can't wait to see the look on her face.
During summer of 2022, my brother began dating this girl, 23 female, and bringing her around my parents' house where I lived at that time. We'll call her Faye. She would attend holiday dinners, birthdays, and things like that. But every time Faye came over, she started to look a little more like me. She started wearing similar clothes and hairstyles, and previously, we had completely different styles and aesthetics. My parents and I noticed and made a few jokes about it between the three of us, but we didn't think too much of it. Maybe she just thought my style was cool, right? At that time, I had platinum hair with purple, pink, and blue colors in it. Faye began asking me for tips on how to dye her hair like mine since I do mine at home. I thought it was innocent, so I gave her some instructions and I told her the products that I used. So, the next time that I saw Faye, her hair was identical to mine. And I couldn't be annoyed about that because I gave her the advice. I have this necklace that I've worn every single day since I was 15. It's a choker with my name on it. Well, Faye got the exact same necklace, but with her name on it. That was once again a little strange to me, but like everything else, I just brushed it off. But when she got fake blue contacts to match my eyes, that's when I seriously became unsettled by her. I did not have a friendship with her, so this was all very weird behavior to me. She actually had me blocked on all her social medias, which, once again, I never understood. I did not know this person, nor why she seemed to resent me for being her partner's sister. I wasn't even close with him. I actually avoided my brother unless he was at my parents' house. So her attitude towards me was just unexplainable. Even my parents were becoming weirded out by her actions. And to this day, we still don't have an answer as to why she was doing all of this. In April of 2023, my brother breaks up with Faye and kicks her out of their apartment. I don't know the details on why this happened. All I know about that situation is that it had always been toxic between the two of them. Constant fighting and battling substance abuse. They were just messy from the start. 2 days after getting kicked out, Faye starts telling my brother that she's pregnant with his child. Both my brother and Faye are so young and both have a history of substance abuse, and my brother was still actively using at that time, so the pregnancy news horrified the entire family. We knew that he wouldn't be stable enough to raise a child, so we immediately knew that this was going to be something that we would all end up pitching in to help with. At that time, my brother had a DUI, no car, in between jobs, and in and out of the mental hospital. Today, he's in a halfway house states away from here. Clearly, bringing a kid into the world was going to really cause some turmoil for our family. My parents had purchased Plan B for the two of them more times than I can count, so at the end of the day, they were being irresponsible. So Faye's pregnant with my brother's kid, and she's acting super strange towards me. I thought all of this was weird, but overall I just felt horrible that a baby was being brought into it. But like I said, up until this point, I wasn't overly concerned. This was all just petty drama. But one night, I confided in a close friend and I told her what was going on with my brother, that I was going to become an aunt soon. My friend asked to see a picture of Faye, so we pulled up her Facebook profile. And that's when we found out everything she has been doing. Faye stole several items from my room, including clothes, blankets, sunglasses, perfumes, probably other stuff too that I haven't even noticed yet. She had copied every single Spotify playlist that I made with the same titles, same songs in the same orders. She had the same exact room set up as me, with the same exact posters and tapestries, and even paintings that my grandmother painted. Faye painted identical ones. How much time do you have on your hands to do all of this shit? At this point, I was scared of her. She had copied everything about me to a T. My hair, my eyes, my outfit, my room, my music. What the fuck? I'm a nail artist, and she even started copying the exact sets of nails that I was doing. I can't imagine how much time she spends trying to become like me. It's so horrifying to think about. Now, backtracking to July of 2023, the place I work at received an email containing a few TikTok videos of me on Molly or acid from back when I was in active addiction, freshly 18, and posting recklessly on a viral account. I've been sober for 2 years now. In that email, the person was essentially trying to get me fired from my job for having a history of substance abuse. I was heartbroken. My boss had no idea about my history with substances, so not only was that embarrassing, but I feared of losing my job. I couldn't even imagine who would have sent this email. I don't have enemies or people out there to get me, so I had no idea where to even begin as far as figuring out who was trying to sabotage me. Months later, I know that it was Faye. There's nobody else it could have been. Along with that email to my work, I received a text message from an unknown, untraceable phone number. It basically said, "I emailed some pretty damning videos of you to your work. If you get fired, I'm sure your parents will take care of you." Which leads me to believe her motive behind all of this is to tear apart my family, cause some problems between my parents and I, so she could weasel her way in or something. I really just don't know. What else could she be trying to gain from doing all of this? So that's the beef of it basically. I just want to know if there's anything that I can do other than staying silent on social medias. Faye is able to view my accounts through fake accounts that she has created, and I'm honestly convinced sometimes that she put a camera in my room or maybe tapped my phone. This whole thing has really made me extremely paranoid. I have proof of everything she's copied or stolen from me. I just don't know if there's anything that I can do with that. I was wondering if anyone had any ideas other than like moving states away and changing my entire identity to escape this person. So this happened back around 2014 to 2015. I was about 19 to 20 years old. I was a scrawny thing at 4'10", not much weight or muscle to myself. We had just moved to this town, and my family and I checked the crime rate. It was pretty low, and so we thought that it was a safe town. Well, boy were we wrong. So, this town was about 1,000 people or so, and we just moved here a few weeks prior. Nothing bad really happened. But one cold winter day, my parents decided to let me walk to the little store in town. It was about 3 blocks away, so like a 5-minute walk. I didn't personally own a cell phone at this time, nor did I have pockets on my pants. I took my parents' phone and card to get whatever we needed at the store at that time. I had the card in my hand, and it was very visible. That was a bad mistake looking back on it. I walked up to the store without incident. I got what I needed, and I left the store pretty quickly, and I put the card into the grocery bag. At this point, the sun was setting. It wasn't dark outside, but the sun was past the buildings in town. I get between the store and an abandoned building with a library almost at the end of the block. I see 3 young boys, probably between middle to high school age, and I knew that I had to go that way to go home, so I was forced to walk past them. At first, I didn't have a bad feeling, and they weren't saying anything to me. I honestly don't think they saw me at first. Anyways, as I get almost to the library, the boys pass me now. They're between the library and the store at this abandoned place, and as soon as my back was to them, I got a very bad feeling. That's when I heard one of the boys said, "You! Yeah, you!" I looked back, and they were headed my way again. I just ignored them and I didn't answer. I heard footsteps, but it was a distance away. But then, I heard them say again, "You! Yeah, you, come here!" Again, I ignored them. This time, the footsteps got louder and faster, like they were jogging. One last time they tried to call me and get to go there, but this time, louder and a lot more aggressive. At this point, the footsteps were at a run now, and almost right behind me. I looked back, and these 3 boys were almost on me, but not quite at arm's length. I got scared. I didn't have any weapon on me to defend myself, and there was nobody on the road. I was all alone with these 3 boys, and I didn't know what to do. So, I gripped my parents' cell phone tighter, my other hand in a fist, and I was ready to fight and use the phone as a weapon. And as soon as these 3 boys were now within arm's length of me, an ambulance goes by. I remember looking at the guys in the ambulance, and they were driving by really slow. They were looking at me, then looking at the 3 boys, and I saw the passenger guy looked at me and smile, and then they drove away. I looked back, and the 3 boys had left and went away from me. I don't know why I didn't yell at the ambulance people for help. Maybe I was too shocked or scared? I call my family members, and I tell them what happened and ask if I could get a family member to come and pick me up or meet up with me and finish walking me home. I don't remember what they said, but by the time that my family got out of the house, I was already home. Thankfully, they didn't follow me home either. I was walking as fast as I could, gripping the phone tight and constantly looking over my shoulders, thinking the whole time to just let me get home safe or let a family member catch up to me. Thankfully, I didn't see them again after this incident. To this day, I do believe the ambulance men saved my life. I had a really bad feeling about these boys, and I think they were gonna rob me or worse. Also, being in a new town, I didn't really know my way around. I honestly kind of ignored my gut feeling, because I could have crossed over onto the other street, but I didn't. Now, I've got a better situational awareness, and I listen to my gut. It has never been wrong, and my gut feeling has steered me in the right direction. This happened when I was in high school. I went to a private Catholic school in the 2010s Midwest. My friends and I were experiencing a very rare and very coveted half day in which we were let out of the school around noon. So we decided to hang out at one of my friend's grandma's house because it was close to the school. The 4 of us drive over to grandma in my friend's 2001 Honda Fit. Just to set the scene, we are 4 young high school girls in Catholic girl uniforms, complete with the plaid skirts and tall socks. At grandma's, we grab a snack and then we decide to walk down to the park. This park is in the middle of a bunch of the home's backyards, like it's all shared, but there's no road to get to it. So, we walk down the hill in grandma's backyard and then start running to the empty park. I remember we were either racing or just running because we were excited. And like I said, it was completely empty, so we felt free to mess around on the jungle gym and the swings and stuff. As I'm talking with my one friend, probably about one of her many crushes, I noticed for the first time the tall and thin bush directly next to the swing set. At this time, we are no more than 4 to 6 feet from the bush. She had her back to it while I was looking at her talking. But I then see through the leaves that there is an entire man standing in the bush. I try to alert the others without saying it outright because we were so close to him that I was scared to provoke him. The others caught on, and then we all sprinted straight back up the hill to Grandma's house. The man never said a word, even when it was obvious that I was telling the other girls about him. He was wearing all black and never left the bush, even when we watched from Grandma's window for the next few hours. When we initially ran up to the park, he must have already been hiding. I can't even begin to think what he was doing there or what his plan was, but I'm very thankful that I wasn't alone that day.
I'm sorry if this story's a bit long, but it's true. I live in a small town which was partially destroyed in the Miyagi earthquake. Many homes were lost. Our house wasn't affected too badly. One of the outer walls were damaged and a huge chest of drawers fell down. Since we work from home, it was a bit disruptive and difficult to find the time to clean up. I was taking calls from customers every day. My dad was busy working and visiting customers. Since the damage was so great, we had nothing but sympathy for them, and we wanted to do everything we could for them. A week passed in the blink of an eye. One weekend, I knew I had to clean the house up, but I was just so tired. I couldn't find the energy. So I decided to go on a solo trip to the hot springs to rejuvenate myself. There was one about 40 minutes away by car. I got back later, and from the car I could see that a light was on the second floor. My parents and my grandparents are usually out at around this time I got back. Furthermore, the light that was on was the light in my bedroom. I left for the hot springs at around midday, so I would have no reason to turn that light on. I wondered if it was my little brother. He lives in Tokyo, but he might have come back to visit us. Maybe he was in my room playing on my console or something. It was a bit of a stretch, but it did seem feasible at the time. I parked up and walked into our family home, not noticing that the door was unlocked and my brother's shoes weren't by the entrance. I called out that I was home. I ran upstairs and down the hall to my bedroom. The door was shut. I opened it and saw that my room was empty. Yet the light was still on. My bed looked different, especially the covers. Some of my drawers were open too. It dawned on me now that the door shouldn't have been unlocked if everyone was out. Why was my bedroom light on? Where was my brother? So many different thoughts swirled around my head. I froze in place. Suddenly, I couldn't move. I remembered that there had been burglaries in the area, and I stood there, shocked. I looked around my room and noticed that my PC and monitor were turned on. Now I knew that a person had been in here recently. If you leave your computer on, the monitor goes to sleep after a while, right? They could still be in the house, I grimly thought. I tried to regain my composure and think about what to do next. I then heard a noise from my closet. The intruder was in my closet. I looked over and saw an eye peering at me from the crack between the doors. I ran for it as fast as I could downstairs and out the door. I got into my car and drove to a friend's house. I called my parents when I got there. I didn't call the police. I should have, but I was in such a panic, I guess I just wanted to know if my parents were okay too. That was pretty dumb of me, I know. Luckily my dad was close by, and he raced home, and he checked the house over, but he couldn't find the intruder anywhere. There was no sign of anything in any other rooms being disrupted either. It seemed as if my room was the only room which had been targeted. The strangest thing was that nothing had been stolen. I told the police at this point, but they told me that what had happened was probably just a misunderstanding, and I had forgotten to turn the computer off and the light off and lock the door. They therefore wouldn't investigate. This really pissed me off. The whole incident freaked me out. I wondered if my family had a stalker. I thought about that for a while and spoke with my family, and then I remembered. A guy. From the year before last to last year, even though I would do nothing other than stay at home or hang out with my friends, a guy was harassing me. We only went out on a couple of dates, and I quit seeing him after he started to become possessive. He would hide outside my house and jump out at me, call me constantly, drop off gifts, and just genuinely terrify me. It stopped at around October time last year. I thought that was all behind me. He lived miles away in the next city, but he was super persistent. He was crazy. This really scared me. So my dad decided to take things into his own hands. He went to this guy's house to confront him. There was no evidence that this was the guy who had been in our home. There was no evidence that anyone had been in our home, but I had a gut feeling he was something to do with it. I wanted him to admit it so the police could get involved and I could get a restraining order. We arrived at his house, and as we did, his mother ran out to greet our car. She didn't look well. You're the one who did this to my son, she called. She looked so angry. He died yesterday, she stated in a low voice. We didn't know what to say. My dad began to stutter an apology and began to explain the purpose of our visit, but she cut him off. What did you do to my son? I did my best to explain the chain of events which led us to her house. Last year, and the one before, the break-in, etc. Then she looked at me and said, You killed him. Then she just started screaming it. We argued, but there was nothing we could say to her. Obviously, she must have known something about what had happened, otherwise she wouldn't have reacted like that. We gave up and went back to the car. We didn't want to worsen her pain if her son was really dead. She didn't seem herself. She was always nice when I met her. My dad really wanted to get to the bottom of this. He was so angry that someone had been in our family home. We drove to a convenience store and waited there for about an hour, and then went back to his family home. My dad tried one of the neighbors. I think it was the second house down from his. He asked if they knew anything about what had happened. And it seems as if he did take his own life, but they could not be certain. They said that he had demons for sure, and that they would hear him screaming late into the night. This was disturbing and sad, to be honest. When we got home, we talked about other things to stop thinking about it. I was winding down to get ready for bed. I was checking my emails and listening to some music. I always saved my MP3s in my documents for some reason. I opened the folder and noticed a text document that hadn't been there before. It was addressed to me. I was worried about opening it. I didn't like it. After a few agonizing moments, my curiosity got the better of me. I opened it, and it horrified me. Of course, it was from that man. All my suspicions were now justified in this document. I read it all, and it made me feel sick to my stomach. He was writing it as if it was the last words anyone would read by him. It was like a suicide note. He had detailed all the dates we had been on, as well as writing about made-up dates that we'd never been on. He sounded completely deluded. He was so normal when I met him. He went to a good university, and he was a perfectly fine person. Why did he do this? It was so sad. But I had no proof that he was dead. I found no obituary, and believe me, I looked for one. I started to get really creeped out again, and before long, I felt eyes on me wherever I went. I decided to park further away from our house, and I changed rooms. I noticed that from close by, on a hill, if you had binoculars, you could see right into my second floor bedroom. I now live on the ground floor in my brother's old room. I still feel as if he's out there somewhere, but I doubt it from time to time. This is just a reminder that if stalking stops after a while, it doesn't mean that it stopped for good. I mean, he got into our house, and he knew the password to unlock my computer.
This week has been hectic. My 3 kids have the flu. The oldest was first, and then my younger 2 caught it. After a visit to the clinic, I was heading to the CVS down the street from our house for their prescriptions. I decided last minute to drop my kids off at home with their dad so that they could rest and I could go inside the store to pick up some Pedialyte. I consider our neighborhood to be safe. I've taken walks after dark, and I've never felt afraid. Most of our neighbors are older folks who have lived there for over a decade. When I pulled up to the CVS, I parked on the side parallel to our street. It's darker on that side, but the entrance is right around the corner and also well lit. There was a man standing outside. He walked in front of my car, and I could hear him talking. But my music was kind of loud, so I figured that he was on his phone or something. No real red flags yet. My husband called me as the man walked back towards the corner adjacent to the entrance. I got out of my car still on the phone and telling my husband that yes, the kids have the flu and I'm picking up medicine at the CVS and etc. In a very pleasant voice, the man says to me, "Hey, I got a question for you. You know where Main Street is?" I, assuming that he is asking for directions or the location of something, I tell him that I do. I'm still holding my phone to my ear. It's in a bright pink case, so I'm sure he could see it. Now, this man is standing directly in front of me. There is a pillar and a trash can behind him. Around the corner is a propane cage and a red box against the store's wall. Getting past him would put me in arm's reach. Next, he asked for a ride there, to a homeless shelter. It's very cold outside and he says that he doesn't want to freeze. I empathize with him, but I said that I couldn't. I offered to buy him gloves or a blanket and to ask an employee in the store to assist in finding a ride for him. Sweet baby Jesus, this guy's face instantly changed to pure rage and then right back to pleasant. "Well, you know what happens to homeless people stuck outside. You're going to help me. It's right down the street." I'm standing there unsure what to do. My husband is on the phone asking what's going on, and I gently tell the man that I don't feel comfortable doing that and that I have the flu and that my husband is on the phone with me. "I don't care about the flu." Now, he's getting more angry and not moving away from my route into the store. I didn't want to turn my back on him to go back to my car, which was several feet away in the dark. While this guy is glaring at me, I decide to quickly walk past him. I had my mask from the clinic in my jacket pocket, so I pulled that out and I held it in front of me while I moved towards the trash can. He looked disgusted, but he kept telling me that I needed to give him a ride. He says that it's right down the street, he insisted. But I know where that street is, and it's not as close as he says. He tried to guilt me, and his words felt threatening, but he didn't actually threaten me verbally. Once I was around the corner, I rushed into the store straight to the pharmacy. My husband said he's calling the police. He heard the way the man was talking to me, and he said to stay in the store. My knees were shaking. I'm not usually the type to be so afraid when confronted. When I got to the pharmacy, I interrupted the pharmacist and a customer, apologizing, and then I told them what happened. The pharmacist sent the store manager out. He was a tall guy with a long beard, and he looked like he doesn't take crap from people. The police had already arrived, and the man was told to leave, which he did, momentarily. He came back inside the store yelling obscenities and something about me. Now, the store manager has told him to get the hell out and that he's trespassing on the property. The cop came back to talk to me and told me that she has arrested him many times before. He's loud and he likes to yell at people, but he isn't violent. The pharmacist had me hiding behind the screen where they give vaccines and let the half door to the pharmacy cracked open in case I needed to get out of there. The cop had also told me this guy's first and last name, as did the store manager. The prescriptions are finally filled, and I was able to leave the store. The police parked next to my car to keep an eye on me. And oh, the man refused a ride from the cop to the shelter. Later, I did look him up. His name is unique, so he was easy to find online. Surprise, surprise. He has a long record spanning 3 states and several counties. Tons of public intoxication charges, DWI, urinating in public, assault and battery, and indecent exposure. I also looked up the homeless shelter. And yeah, as I thought, there isn't one where he wanted me to take him, but the area is super sketchy. Earlier today, I went to the corner store across from the CVS and I told my friend, the overnight shift employee, what happened. She kicks him out of the store and calls the police every time she sees him because he yells and threatens customers, but he always takes off before the police arrive. I know that I could have handled that better, but I was blindsided by his instant shift from pleasant to filled with rage. A big thank you to the pharmacy team who kept me safe and also the store manager for confronting the creep. They didn't have to do all of that. And I'm also thankful that my husband recognized that I was in an unsafe situation over the phone. This man is still out there, somewhere in my area. I have a thing that happened to me a couple of years ago that really scared the hell out of me, and I thought that your audience would at least find it interesting and creepy. It was a pretty normal day, a fairly basic day off, which meant it was either a Thursday or a Friday. Back then, I lived in a townhome that was owned by and on the edge of an apartment complex property. It was a day off, and on my first day off, I always take care of my grocery shopping and any other random things. Because of this, I'm usually not home from 10 in the morning to sometime in the afternoon or evening. I know, this sounds like it's irrelevant, but it actually does matter as to what happened because it sets the scene a bit. On this particular day, I had spent the entire day out doing a ton of errands, and at the end of the day, I had to go to the grocery store. After I did my grocery shopping, I got home and nothing seemed out of the ordinary. I pushed the door open, and the first thing I did out of habit was to reach for the light switch. It clicked, and the overhead light clicked on and flooded the room. And then I turned into the main part of my living room. But, much to my surprise, it wasn't just the normal empty room. There was a man sitting in my armchair, a complete stranger, just sitting there. He was wearing fairly nondescript clothes, jeans, a black t-shirt, a black leather or pleather jacket. He was literally just sitting there and staring off into the room. He didn't even acknowledge that I'd entered my home. For a few seconds, or maybe a few minutes, I don't really know, I just stood there with my 4 grocery bags in one hand and my keys in the other. My mind was racing through every terrifying possibility. Was this man going to rob me? Attack me? Did I upset someone to the point that they would send an assassin to my house? That's how weird it was. My brain was going through all possibilities. The man didn't move for several moments. He just sat there and stared out into the room like he was in a meditative state or sedated or something. I stood there, frozen in fear and confusion, and I was slowly reaching for my pepper spray that was clipped to the purse that I had accidentally dropped when I jumped the moment I saw him. Then, as abruptly as this whole event had started, the man stood up from the chair. He stood up slowly, and again, I started thinking he was about to leap at me. As soon as he stood up completely, he let out a slight sigh and said, "Well, I should probably get going." He didn't look at me, didn't acknowledge me, and just said what he said, completely devoid of all emotion, then walked past me toward the door. He got close enough to me that I could smell the tobacco on his clothes. I remained completely rooted to the spot that I was in, actually too scared to even move at this point. He just reached for the front door, pulled it open, stepped outside onto the front porch, and then disappeared into the night. And just like that, he was gone. Once I finally managed to move, the first thing I did was lock the door, and the second was call the police. I tried to explain the whole situation, and then within minutes, there was a cruiser right outside my front door. I told them all about how he was just in my house, how he didn't do anything other than say that he should go and then leave. I described him as best as I could, told them what he was wearing and what he looked like, and etc. The officers were thorough, but thankfully gentle with how they asked things because I was freaking out. They cleared the rest of the townhome, confirmed that nothing looked ransacked, and that they couldn't find any signs of forced entry. They then said that they would patrol and see if they could find this mystery man. When they left, I confirmed what they said, and all the windows were shut and locked. Nothing was missing. If this man hadn't been obviously a physical person that opened the door, I would have honestly thought that it was a damn ghost. I have no idea how he got into my home. I have no idea why he was there, and I have literally zero knowledge as to why he was in my townhome and sitting in my chair like that. This was a pretty major violation of my security, and I ended up buying a doorbell camera for my front door. I needed something to make me feel safer, and a camera was the only thing that gave me the slightest semblance of security. For the first few days, every time that I got the notification of motion, I would check it, thinking that it would show me someone opening my door and then walking in. But it was never that, thankfully. The cops never found the guy, and I never saw him again, and thankfully nothing like this ever happened again. Despite that, that night was probably the most terrifying thing that has ever happened to me. To enter my home and to have a stranger sitting in my chair like that, only to just stand up and walk out. It was surreal. So again, I know that not a lot happened, but I thought that your listeners would find the creepiness to the whole situation, and I hope that I never see that man again. And here's the riddle for this video. Hello everyone, it's your creepy sister here. Thank you so much for watching the video. I really appreciate each and every one of you. But I would also like to thank my amazing patrons, my top tippers, and my dearest channel members. Thank you very, very much. I really appreciate it with all of my heart. If you want to support the channel further, you could also choose to become a patron, a tipper, or a channel member. But remember, it's appreciated, but never a requirement. I would also like to announce that we have merch now. The link is in the description of the video, along with all my other social media links, like my Discord server, Twitter, Instagram, and others. You can connect with me and send your stories there. And don't forget to like and subscribe if you haven't yet, and comments are highly appreciated. And remember, your fear feeds me.